Good? All right, ready? All right, good morning. I'm Special Agent in Charge Mark Brutnell from FDLE in Tampa. Joining me here today is Attorney General Ashley Moody and Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office Chief Deputy Joe Mauer. We're here today to announce the arrest of James Staton for his criminal dealings with Olympus Pools. I first want to just take a moment to thank our investigative team for an amazing job on this. We have Special Agent Jim Gao from FDLE, Detective Izzy Hernandez with Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. Our two crime intelligence analysts, Karen Allen and Brittany Wilbur, did an amazing job on this case, and also our prosecutor, Stephanie Bergen from Office of State Prosecution. Thank you, guys. If it wasn't for you, we would not be standing here today. So as you can see, James Staton has been charged with one count of aggravated white-collar crime, one count of organized scheme to defraud, 20 counts of grand theft, 8 counts of misapplication of construction funds, and 5 counts of contractor fraud. So how did we get here? Well, in October of 2021, multiple sheriff's offices throughout the Tampa Bay area were receiving complaints on James Staton and Olympus Pools. We actually had a meeting in this room to discuss this case in October of 21. So FDLE, in conjunction with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, initiated a criminal investigation into James Staton and Olympus Pools. We were able to identify 140 victims in Hillsborough, Pasco, Polk, Manatee, Sarasota, and Pinellas counties. This investigative team's analysis focused on 31 of the 140 victims. These 31 victims had similarities in fact pattern and depicted the same fraudulent scheme. We were able to determine that Staton fraudulently utilized in excess of $1.5 million from his victims for his personal everyday life since 2020. We're looking at about an 18-month period of our investigation financially. Olympus Pools was in serious financial trouble in 2020. Staton knew that, but he continued to perpetrate his fraud. So how did the scheme work? A homeowner would meet with a sales rep from Olympus Pools to start the process of building their dream pool. Olympus Pools would require usually a 10% down payment, or if the unsuspecting customer was willing to pay in full, they would get a discount rate with the assurances of a much quicker timeline of completion. The average time for a pool to be completed should be 6 months. The majority of the time, these pools were never completed. After months of little or no communication, Olympus Pools would contact the customer, soon to be victim, and ask for a payment for different portions of the construction. For instance, we need $10,000 to start excavation. We need another $7,000 to get your gunite shot into your shell. The tile guy needs $10,000. Once they receive these payments, Olympus Pools would then hire subcontractors to perform the work, which never occurred. Several customers had to endure the stress of construction liens being placed on their property through no fault of their own. Again, I can't underscore this enough. The vast majority of these pools sat idle for months and were never completed. These poor victims did everything right in attempting to get their money back, contacting Staton, writing him letters, getting attorneys. He just simply ignored them and would not respond. Agents and analysts subpoenaed multiple business and personal bank accounts, credit card accounts, and loans obtained by Staton. This was challenging due to the number of accounts and large amounts of money moving around the accounts, but ultimately the numbers told the story. We were able to determine that Staton moved monies from his business accounts to his personal accounts to live a very lavish lifestyle. This lifestyle included vacations, jewelry, vehicles, home improvements, expensive dinners, and high-end designer purchases. We were able to determine a pattern of spending approximately $50,000 to $70,000 a month. Instead of using the customer's money to provide the pool they had promised, he used it to live far beyond his means. There's several examples. I'm going to highlight just a few that I find to be the most egregious. Several times, Staton took multiple employees and family members for all expenses paid trips to Key West, Jamaica, New Orleans, and Las Vegas. He spent approximately $10,000 a month on private school. He spent $53,000 for Super Bowl 55, which was here in Tampa. For one game, he spent $53,000. When he eventually ran out of money, his answer was to fraud even more people and line his pockets even more. These victims trusted him with providing them with their dream pool, for which they worked very hard to attain. Some of these poor victims used their entire life savings and retirement funds. He preyed on these victims for his own personal gain and I can honestly say he's not going to be held accountable for his actions. With the great office that Attorney General Moody has, the Office of State Prosecution, this case took a while, but it's finally come to fruition, and I could not be happier for the work they put in. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to AG Moody. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach Boudinel, and thank you for all of you for being here today. This is a case that has taken some time to investigate and run down accounts and money, and it really was to the credit of the folks standing behind me, not just prosecutors, but the investigators and analysts that worked so hard. And many, as I personally visited them on days and said thank you as they were cooped up in rooms examining documents, the citizens of these multiple counties affected owe you a debt of gratitude. Thank you very much. This is an important day for the state of Florida. What was incredibly frustrating about this case is even after issues began arising where customers were left with gaping holes in their yards, pools not completed after handing over tens of thousands of dollars to the defendant in this case, it became very obvious as records were reviewed and this case was investigated that the perpetrator kept going after more and more money and digging more holes and leaving more sites abandoned and homes destroyed in their backyards. And so it was incredibly frustrating to see how this unfolded. And as more consumers came forward, more victims came forward, it became clear that the business in name was being used as a shield, almost part of the con of taking so much money from these folks and never completing what was promised. And so today is an important day. I think so many of you who were really on top of this from the beginning, the citizens of these counties owe you for hounding this case and making sure that voices were heard, and we're certainly appreciative in the state, because I think that today was very important for justice for these victims. The defendant in this case, as you heard, paid demanded thousands of dollars up front, sometimes full payment. And we know that in Florida heat, especially throughout the year, not just in the summer, people imagine, they dream, they hope for the day they can get a pool. And sometimes they save up for a really long time to fulfill that dream. And so in this case, we saw that money that was charged for these defendants or these victims was anything from $40,000 to $100,000, as you can imagine. So many saved up for years, and this was lost. And coupled with that, shockingly, when the money was used to pay for personal expenses and other things by this defendant, subcontractors that were never paid then liened the victim's property. So not only were they out all of this money with a big hole or just a mess in their backyard, their property was liened through no fault of their own. And so it's so important that we remain vigilant and stay on top of cases like this, because not only will this defendant be held accountable, this has to be a message to anybody out there in Florida, any contractor. If you hold yourself out to be a business, you cannot use that to play a part in some scheme to just take people's money. That cannot happen. And so people will often ask, what is a civil case versus a criminal case? Well, in a civil case, we want to make sure that folks are held civilly responsible when there's deceptive practices. And that happens, and we ask for people to report that to our office so that we can identify when that's happening and make sure that stops. But there are also cases where it rises to a level where someone intends to defraud someone from their money, and it rises to the level of criminal activity. And we cannot let, just because someone is operating under a business name, we cannot let that shield people from criminal liability when that is appropriate. And that is what we have today. And that is what we're announcing today. So we want to make sure that folks understand that in Florida, While some of these cases are complex and finding where money went is often very detail-oriented and takes a lot of time and attention, if you set out to defraud Floridians, we will find that out. Not only will victims and consumers complain, but we have other folks in this state that are the voice of those victims that are going to complain loudly, and we will find you and we will hold you accountable. We try to stay on top of things happening in our state, trends happening maybe around the nation, and be proactive in helping our citizens remain on guard so that they can protect themselves. I want everyone to know that we have a Scams at a Glance informational brochure called Sink or Swim. Scams at a Glance, Sink or Swim, and it gives folks ways that they can prevent being taken advantage of when they're attempting to buy a pool. Now, you can always verify that a contractor has a license with the Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation. That's step one. We always ask that Floridians do their research up front, ask for recommendations from friends or family members, but you can also go to organizations like the Better Business Bureau, which not only lists complaints, but gives ratings. And so if there is an overwhelming amount of complaints, oftentimes that will show up at the Better Business Bureau. That's just one organization that helps verify the performance of companies. Be wary of contractors who demand large upfront payments or payment in full upfront. That's a warning sign. So you may want to do your research and be extra vigilant. And make sure to review and understand a contract in full before signing. And again, all of our Scams at a Glance can be found on myfloridalegal.com, myfloridalegal.com. So again, today's announcement is a culmination of efforts from Manatee, Polk, Hillsborough Sheriff's Offices, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Of course, this case will progress through the court system, and this is just the beginning of a long fight, but we will not stand idly by while folks take advantage of Floridians, and we're going to use every tool at our disposal to make sure folks are held accountable. Thank you again for being here today, and thank you for all of you who have paid particular attention to this case throughout its progression.
Good morning. On behalf of Sheriff Chad Chronister, I would like to thank Attorney General Ashley Moody and FDLE for their partnership and collaboration during this investigation with our construction fraud unit. It is my honor and distinct privilege to stand up here with these investigators and these analysts as they use their tenacity and attention to detail in this type of investigation. This story of fraud and theft started on May 14, 2021 for the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office. Our construction fraud unit became aware of Olympus Pools and its owner, James Statton. In a matter of days, we started to receive more complaints from other Hillsborough County citizens alleging construction fraud, notary fraud, and theft against Olympus Pools. Our fraud unit contacted other counties and agencies, and we learned that criminal complaints are being received from all over Tampa Bay, as alluded to by the Attorney General. On June 21st, 2021, our HCSO construction fraud unit began to work in collaboration with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and their investigators. During that investigation, the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office received over 40 reports alleging theft or fraud by James Statton and Olympus Pools. This businessman turned fraudster took advantage of people hoping to accomplish a dream, who made great sacrifices to get a pool in their home. Here are some of the worst cases I'd like to bring to your attention. A retired, disabled couple paid over $26,000 from their retirement savings. Their pool was never completed, and ultimately the project was abandoned. A couple who paid a $10,000 deposit never saw the company return or to get any work done. James Statton cashed their check and never contacted them again. An elderly, retired, and disabled veteran who also paid James Statton and Olympus Pools $33,000 before they abandoned his pool. Some victims had their money taken and no work was done. Many others had it worse. Homeowners were left with large holes on their property, incomplete construction, and often had to pay thousands and thousands of dollars to other pool companies to fix and complete the job. That's if they could find someone to take on the mess that resulted from Olympus Pools in James Staten. Many homeowners were left with liens on their property because James Staten never paid the subcontractors or supply providers. In Hillsborough County alone, the total loss to victims was found to be more than $1.5 million. Preying on the citizens of Hillsborough County will not be tolerated by any shape or form by Sheriff Chad Chronister and Team HCSO. With collaboration with the Attorney General and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and all our law enforcement partners, fraudsters, con men, thieves, we will find you, we will prosecute you, we will arrest you, and we will be tenacious in everything that we do. Thank you very much.
Take some questions.
I have a question. There are a lot of people that were involved in the running of this company. Do you expect more arrests?
Still active investigation on that right now. We're still looking at some things. This was the first part of this phase.
I also have a question about the bond. It's a pretty high bond, $2.8 million. Can you comment on why you chose that?
We didn't choose that. That was given by the judge. That was the judge's decision.
Question over here.
Yes, ma'am.
Understanding the timeline that we're talking about, complaints that started to come in long before the fall of 2021. What was it about that date that was significant, or why was there a wait before there was this joint investigation that began in the fall of 2021?
Well, prior to the 21, there was several complaints that were handled through the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, and we did not know the other sheriff's offices in the Bay Area had already received complaints. It just took collaboration from those agencies to get together to actually say, well, we got the same fact patterns in all these different counties. Let's work jointly and put a big case together criminally.
Thank you. I just have one more question. We understand we've been following the payouts from the Department of Business and Professional Regulation and the claims that are being paid for by the Construction Recovery Fund. Will this criminal case result in any good to the victims? Is there any way that this case could help lead to restitution?
I think the general could probably answer that better.
Right, so there's a fund where folks can go initially. The reality of this particular case is a lot of the money, and in fact part of this criminal investigation involves tracing where that money was going. And a lot of that money was spent, well, you heard one example, $50,000 at the Super Bowl. A lot of it went to personal expenses. And so civilly, there is currently a bankruptcy proceeding, and there'll be claims made through that. Certainly, we will seek to recover both fines and restitution through the criminal proceeding. And we hope that that is helpful in compensating victims, but it's going to be tracing and getting to that money.
And a lot of it was spent, I'm guessing.
You can read the indictment and the papers that have been filed thus far. A lot has been spent on lavish personal expenses, which lays the foundation of much of what we're announcing today, which is a criminal prosecution.
Now, Mr. Staten's attorney told me yesterday that it's not illegal, it doesn't make you a criminal to be a bad businessman, and that's how he's saying this went, that this was just a bad businessman, mismanagement, not criminal intent. What do you say to that?
When you have someone that takes cash, doesn't do what's promised, and continues to take more and more cash and doesn't do what's promised, and pushes the money into personal accounts for lavish personal expenses, it rises to the level of criminal activity. And I would assume that the defense will be, well, this was just a business and I'm a bad businessman. That is why we have juries. That is why we have great prosecutors and investigators standing behind me. And we intend to fight this case, because what happened here was fraud to these unsuspecting victims who are out of a lot of money. And even when it was brought to the attention, and even when the opportunity to make whole or repay was available, the activity and the spending continued. And that sets it apart where someone gets over their heads in business expenses and has a hard time moving forward in a profitable way in a business. Those are two completely different things. And I believe that this criminal case and this prosecution will bear that out.
I have one more question about the money. In our investigation, doing stories on this, we saw that Olympus Pools took PPP money. Do you know what happened to that PPP money? Do you know what happened to the PPP money? And is that part of this investigation and your financial analysis?
I'll ask my investigator. Do you have any y'all want to answer that?
Just to keep it simple, the PPP money was looked into in the financial analysis of it. That money was used to pay payroll. It was documented through payroll, and the bank that approved the loan forgave the loan. That's how it works. The bank did their own investigation as well, and it was confirmed to them that that money was used legitimately to pay payroll and other expenses like utilities.
Calling last question.
Where's Mr. Stanton now? Is he in jail or will he be out bond? Where is he right now?
He's in the Pasco County Jail, and I think there's a first appearance today at noon, I believe.
Have you seized any of his assets? For this ill-forgotten money, have you seized any?
No, sir, not as of yet.
No more questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.